Good evening. Welcome to the Red Hook Town Board meeting of January 24th, 2018. Would you be kind enough to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Steve, for the folks at home, you have up on the screen tonight's agenda. Okay, very good. We start with announcements. I actually don't have any announcements tonight for the first time, I think. Does anybody have some announcements they would like to make? No? No. Okay, very good. Well, why don't we delve right into public comment period? Would anybody like to make some public comments? Kenny?
This will be brief. Should be. You still have the flu? Hey.
Thanks. I never had the flu, so.
Oh, good, thanks.
I did. So don't get close.
It might be too good.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
That's for you. This is about Freeborn Lane, as you know. Just a quick. So the first letter is, this came from the New York State Consolidated Laws of Highway, and the wording that you see in this is just, it was a much larger paragraph than I was unable to copy it. So, but I think Chris, you might want to look at this more in detail. If you pull this up and see 205 highway abandoned, and it talks about after 6 years, if not being used by the public, shall cease to be a highway. Talks about town superintendent and the town board shall thereupon be discontinued. I guess they do a vote or something. And then number 2 would be abandonment of such highway will not cause injustice or hardship to the owner or occupant of any lands adjoining such highway. So that would be myself and the village of Tivoli would be the only occupants. And they talk about a public hearing of those landowners, if need be, but I don't think that would be needed. And let's see, it shall no longer be worked as a public expense. And the town of Red Hook hasn't had any expense for 25 plus years as far as I've been taking care of it and plowing it and so forth. And then it speaks of owners of adjoining land may construct and maintain across said highway a fence/gate at each end, which has been done. And then that the adjoining lands will have access traveled through. So in the map, you can see I highlighted the area that's been gated for over 25 years. And if you look at the parcels, again, it's just myself and the village of Tivoli who have the adjoining lands in that area. And there's also a letter there from the village of Tivoli stating that they're fine with this change of ownership as long as they have access to the dump because they need to mow it, and DEC needs to come in and periodically test the wells. And what I would do is on this one parcel that has 16.7 acres, I would put on the deed of that parcel, just like they have right-of-ways on properties to allow people to have access to their property, on that parcel, I would put in a deed stating that Tivoli has access to their lands, and I would also put in what we spoke about a couple Fridays ago with Northland, the one person who has farmland that they farm on Lasher Road, have access through. So what that would do is, 20 years or 30 years down the road, or 50, when I don't have ownership anymore, that would be on the deed of that parcel. So whoever purchased that parcel would know that these are the stipulations of that. So this is some more information to further move this along, and hopefully if you have any questions.
But Tivoli is agreeable if you maintain the road, right?
Yes,
That's what their letter.
right, so that would
So you would do
maintain
the-
and allow access to their lands.
Thank you, Kenny. We are working on it. Chris and I were working on it between the last
Okay.
meeting and this meeting.
Yep, thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yep.
Are there any other public comments? Linda?
I noticed on the agenda you didn't have correspondence. Is that normally done at this time or next?
No,
month?
correspondence is done at the end of the meeting.
Okay, and will you be doing the correspondence you received from the Department of State?
I don't know what that's.
It's on my copy of the agenda, it's number 10.
Oh,
It's at the end. It's probably on the second page or right.
oh, okay. All right, as long as it gets discussed. The other thing I would like to bring up is the possibility of having lawsuits enumerated, and as well as the costs, so that the taxpayer knows what is being spent on any lawsuits that you're involved with now and into the future.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Linda. Anybody else have some public comments? Okay. So let's delve right into the agenda. We have reorganization, and at our last meeting, we were able to accomplish a fair amount of reorg. And we set for tonight to try to tackle at least a few of our committee appointments. And I believe this is where we were. We did all the liaisons.
One correction I would make is we decided, where possible, to bring it down to one town board member per committee, and the CAC was just gonna be myself. I think Bill O'Neill is not gonna be the liaison any longer unless I'm,
And that wasn't updated as
so we
such.
should just take that one off. I think that's the only one that needs a,
A
do you see
correction.
that one, Claire? It's on page 3. You could just updates for Sue.
Okay. We didn't add a liaison to the Greenway and Trails Committee. Would anybody like to offer themselves for that?
I'll take it.
Thank you, Christine. All right. So that's 2 changes to that. Okay, so town board committee appointments. We have not heard back from the Ag and Open Space Advisory Committee, so we'll leave that to next meeting. Assessment Review Board, we did have a letter just the other day from Jeff Ackerley saying that he is going to be moving. And so he is resigning from the Assessment Review Board. And so you see his spot actually, or he has resigned from the ARB. So there's a vacancy now on the Assessment Review Board. And so let's keep an eye out if you have some ideas of who might be a good replacement for Jeff.
So do we have to appoint the person into his term? which I can't read the date of. Is it
That's,
2018?
that's correct. It's 2018, yep, and the vacancy is for that period. The other individuals all have a term that hasn't ended with the exception of Carl Dowden. Carl is willing to stay on both as chair and a member. And so I would go ahead and make a motion to approve Carl Dowden for a 5-year term ending in 2022.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And a separate motion for him as chair, 1-year term, ending in 2018. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's see if we have any more correspondence here. CPF PDR advisory, I don't think we have anything back from them yet. Next meeting. Sarah, anything from Communications Committee, folks?
Everybody there wants to stay on, but I'd like to probably add Teresa Burke. And
Okay.
I don't know if, as a town employee, yeah, I think I wanna wait maybe one more meeting since we'll be doing this
Okay.
again. Cause I may talk to Ann and see would she just prefer to swap out with Teresa, cause Ann hasn't been able to make many meetings.
Okay.
So let me just,
Wanna wait on that?
yeah.
Okay. The CAC, we had correspondence from them that they all wish to continue to serve. So the ones that are up for reappointment are Michael Zeely, Lori Husted, Dennis Coulet, Lori Urban, and Jen Kavanaugh. And so I would like to make a motion that we approve their reappointments to those terms ending in 2019. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then for the chair, Lori's done a terrific job. I would support her reappointment ending in 2018. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And we do have a vacancy, one vacancy left on the Conservation Advisory Council. If you are interested in joining that, it's a terrific group. Excuse me. Design Review Hamlet Committee. We have 5 members. We have a vacancy also with that. All of those members wish to stay on.
Do we get letters or something, or?
We did. We got an email from Chris Gilbert. It should be in your packet there.
You mean for an additional
I don't
person?
have anything on this in my packet,
Oh,
Oh, and
so I'm just reading from the screen.
I don't know why. Maybe we should get you Harry's packet, or you're welcome to borrow mine.
It was under number 2 or 3 of the tab.
It should be in 1.
Yeah, it should be in 1, so I don't have it. I did check 2, I am looking 3.
Oh.
Well, it
Okay.
is hiding in 3, I don't know why it's in 3, but okay.
All right, here's the email from Chris. They're happy to be reappointed. We still have a vacancy there for the Design Review Hamlet Committee, but the individuals wishing to be reappointed are Jeff Carter, Tiffany Nogales, and Chris Gilbert as chair. So a separate motion for Jeff Carter and Tiffany Nogales, 2-year term ending 2019. Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And chair for Chris Gilbert for another year, a term ending in 2018.
So moved.
All right. And is
Has there been, I just say from the, the planning board's point of view, there's definitely some confusion within the design review committee as to response times and type of information to come back, so has there been any conversations about that?
I know there have been in the past. I can check in with Chris and see, and the planning board, and see how we're doing with turnaround times, see if there's any improvement there. Yeah, I don't know that we have somebody offering up to chair that committee besides Chris. Time being.
Does he say why they can't meet the deadline?
No,
Well, maybe you could have a talk with him.
yeah, so I just think we need to make sure we clarify that with
Okay.
the committee.
Shall we reappoint him, or do we want to hold up on that?
Why don't we discuss with him first and then
Okay,
reapprove pending
next meeting?
review?
Okay. Haven't heard anything from disaster preparedness, so we'll skip that one. Economic Development Committee. I don't think we heard back from that. Nope. Okay, next meeting, Energy Committee, those individuals want to be reappointed. It's a one-year appointment for the Energy Committee, so everybody's term ends in 2018. That's Dennis Colley, Jim Kavanaugh, Lori Husted, Paul Cadden-Zemansky, Dan Smith, who was on the committee years ago, is interested, but we'll wait to get his letter of interest. So those 4 individuals, and I would so move their reappointment. Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Ethics Board, Fred's in Mexico. We heard back from him, but he did not say anything about the ethics committee members.
Members?
Yeah, so it's basically Gail. I can reach out to Gail directly if Fred's out of the country. Greenway and Trails, we did hear, I think, from Howie.
He said everybody
Everybody wants to stay on? Okay, so those are 2-year appointments for Howie, Bruce, Anna San Juan, Brenda Cagle, Lisa Whalen. Anybody like to make a motion to reappoint those individuals?
So moved.
Okay, and I would second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and also for the chair, Howie Callis, for another year reappointment. Would you like to make that motion?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All
Can you
right.
hear us all right, Claire?
All right, there's an intermunicipal shared services highway working group. I don't know that that's going to be in existence anymore. The intermunicipal task force, we were going to look at membership there. I don't think we've had any updates, letters of interest or anything on that. We'll come back to that one. Planning Board, we have a vacancy still on the Planning Board, a term ending in 2019. If you are interested in serving on the Planning Board, please send a letter of interest. Rec Commission. I don't think we got anything from the Rec Commission, did we, Sarah?
I didn't hear of anything. They didn't mention it at their last meeting, but they have low attendance, so.
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
On the planning board? So, I know at the previous meeting, we appointed Sam Phelan to be the chair.
Is it not reflected in this list?
Yes, but then I
Okay.
noticed that his term, do we have to reappoint him for a term.
Oh, yeah, we should, did we do that? We
I
should
don't,
do
I
that.
don't know if we did the term at the same time. I think we might have just done the chair
Yeah,
position.
okay. So a motion to reappoint Sam to a spot
Second.
ending in 2024. We know he's not gonna serve that long. I would second that motion.
Well, the motion by Christine and then seconded by Robert.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. So recognition, nothing, St. Margaret's, we have to reconstitute. Senior services, now I'm surprised we didn't hear about back from that, back for that next month?
We have to reconstitute St. Margaret's, I'm sorry, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Bill's gonna start working on that. Sister Cities Working Group, that's not really an active committee. Tree preservation, we heard back from them. George Michael, all members will continue to serve, that's great. So up for reappointment are Cody Hay, David Grover, and Eleanor Friary. And 2-year appointments would end in 2019. And I would make that motion to reappoint them.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And for the chair, Kathy Michael, a 1-year reappointment ending 2018, and I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Water District Water Board. Well, we have our chair here of the Water Board. I don't know that we have communication from you, but we have Jerry, whose term ended in 2017, Larry Carr,
Yes.
and Greg, his
Yes,
term,
they're interested.
and Ann Rubin.
I haven't heard from Ann, and she hasn't attended any meetings, so
Oh, she hasn't,
I
okay.
suggest that
We table that for now.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would like to make a motion that we reappoint Jerry Gilnack, Lawrence Carr,
yeah, oh,
Greg Cloudy. No, I'm not gonna reappoint Nick Annis because he doesn't need reappointment. His term ends at the end of this year.
all right.
You're stuck.
Yeah, you're good till 2018.
One Nick Annis is enough. We can't have two, okay? All right.
Big enough for two.
I could get in trouble if I said that.
Yeah.
Lucky it wasn't the case. So we have those 3 individuals. Is there a second on my motion to reappoint?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then a motion to reappoint as chair and vice chair. So chair Hank Van Paris is with us tonight, and vice chair Jerry Gilnack.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and those terms end in 2018. And then last, or almost last, well, why don't we skip over ZBA and go to zoning review committee and essentially say we haven't heard anything from them. And we can go back to ZBA because that's a segue. I think we're gonna skip agenda items for, well, I think that sort of concludes reorg, and we can go right into the discussion on local law B. This is agenda item number 2, zoning board of appeals. So for many years, town boards of the town of Red Hook have discussed coming into compliance with New York State and the directions for ZBAs. They would like ZBAs to have 5 or 3 members. And we've been grandfathered for, I don't even know how long, but a very long time at 7 members. And so we have a situation where we've had resignations and will be having resignations, where it may be an opportune time for us to go to 5 members. And so in order to do that, we would need to actually have a very brief local law adopting a change in the number of members, and a draft law has been circulated to you.
What will be the number?
B,
For
Huh?
it would
5.
be B.
B as in boy?
Mm-hmm.
Local law number B?
Number B.
Mm-hmm.
Just to confuse you, it will become a number when it's adopted.
Right.
All right, and,
Well, I so move the resolution for local law number B as proposed.
okay.
I'll second that.
All right, is there any further discussion? This resolution is to establish a date for a public hearing. So there'll be a public hearing on February 13th. At, we'll say 7:50, we already have a public hearing at 7:35 at the town hall. Whereas a proposed form of local law number B entitled Reduction of Members of the Town of Reading Zoning Board of Appeals has been submitted for consideration and has been moved by Councilman O'Neill and seconded by Councilperson Bowden. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
I would just echo what you said about, it's a recommendation from the state that had us considering this reduction, and we have talked about it a lot for a number of years. I think Nick and various members of the ZBA have recommended that we consider it, and I know for my part, I've observed other towns who have 5-member ZBAs. It's not uncommon in our area, so I'm looking forward to the discussion, and I think it's a good idea for our part to go ahead while we have a number of open positions or positions that need to be reappointed, to go ahead and do this now.
Okay. Very good. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. I'm going to suggest we jump around just for 1 second. We have Hank here with us in case we have any questions about agenda item 6. So if you would kindly go to that section of your folders. Okay, we have a memo that you've received from Hank talking about doing an engineering analysis to help us determine in advance of what direction we should go as far as repainting or replacing the water tank. And so his recommendation is to go ahead with this analysis. And are there any questions for Hank or any comments before we go ahead and vote on this resolution?
Could you, Hank, would you mind explaining, is this, are we authorizing them to create a proposal for us, or is there already a proposal and we're voting to
They
do what the
came to
proposal
us with
says?
a proposal to do a study
Okay,
relative to painting or replacing.
got it.
And cost for that proposal is $15,000, with an additional secondary proposal to look into the need for a mixing system in the tank. We don't have one. Other water people I've talked to, including of course our health department, say we should have a mixer in the tank. We haven't had any problems as a result, because of not having one, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't proceed. And I think if we go either way with a repaint and refurbish or replace, we should probably put in a mixer.
So your memo says that you wouldn't have pursued it at this time. I was just wondering
Right.
what that means.
Well,
They cold
what that,
called you?
what that meant was that after our inspection, the tank was inspected last summer, and our informal agreement among water board members that discussed it was that we would wait 5 years and then decide. However, if we're going to repaint, we probably should do it soon, all right, before we get additional damage and additional costs related to refurbishing and repainting. The other thing is, when we're going to spend $1 million, $2 million, I think with, you know, alternative approaches, I think engineering analysis is worth doing, just to give us a good basis for making that decision. So I kind of revisited my opinion. And the other thing I was thinking, it isn't in my memo, but I'm getting kind of old, and I have no idea how much longer, you know, I'm going to be doing this job. It would be nice to have a good, solid analysis done so that whoever has to make this decision in the next few years has a good basis and doesn't have to start from scratch. So that's another part of my rationale.
Okay.
You know, help us plan for whichever direction.
Yes.
You all recommend we have.
We'll get a direction out of this and then we can proceed. I think we need to do that.
Right. Okay, any other questions? If not?
I just had one.
Sure.
So the $15,000 is, I mean, it's not specifically included in the budget. I wasn't here for the budgeting process. So is it included in the budget line and it can be reallocated from somewhere else to cover this, or?
It comes out of the reserves. There are reserve funds in the water district.
The water district,
funds,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
Which is extremely well managed.
Yes.
And
Yes, I know
has a
that
healthy
part.
reserve
Yep.
for
Yep.
instances such as this.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Very good. This is resolution number 4? Oh. Okay. Resolution number 4 dated January 24th, authorizing a contract for engineering services regarding water tank evaluation. And I so move. A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Okay. Let's go on to a not so fun topic, agenda item 3.
Thank you, Hank.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hank. Good night.
Always a pleasure.
Okay, so healthcare. As you know, we received from our healthcare brokers the proposal for renewal plans, and to continue with the current plan that we have.
Are you gonna have any further discussion with the ZBA regarding that?
No.
Oh, all right, then. No offense, I'm gonna leave.
Okay.
The public hearing is February 13th.
February 13th.
There actually are more exciting things to do.
I don't believe it.
The public hearing is
Thanks.
February 13th.
Okay.
Yep.
We want a full report of what you turned us down for, though, Nick.
What?
Okay, so we received from our healthcare brokers the renewal plans for us to take a look at, and we're really taken aback by what, just renewing our existing plan, what the renewal increase will be. It's 15%. Again, it's like it doesn't seem to ever end, these huge increases. And of course, every time we get a 15% increase, it's on an increasing number. And so the increase is essentially $33,000, almost $33,000 from one year over another. If we were to maintain our policies and our plans the way they exist now, and there's a chart I think that's sort of telling what's happened over a multi-year period. And I'll blow this up so folks can see. I hope that's big enough, maybe not, maybe I can go bigger. So you see, just in the period from 2013 to 2018, the medical insurance has increased, depending upon if you have a single or a double or a family plan, has increased over or just under 100%. The HRA portion of it, because when we moved from one plan to another, trying to save money, it had a higher deductible, but actually that HRA portion of it increased, it tripled. So if you look at, for example, the same, trying to provide the same benefits
That chart is in this
in
packet if you want.
2018 as we had in 2013, the total between medical, vision, dental has moved from, for example, a family plan, $15,537 to more than double that. So it would now cost the town taxpayers to provide family coverage, potentially, if they utilize all of the HRA, $31,410.
So is that chart showing full utilization?
Full
or-
utilization of the
or-
HRA.
Or the actual utilization that we've been,
It's full utilization.
so the
So-
actual utilization is less than that?
It is less than that. But this is the potential that we have to budget for. And so even without any HRA utilization, the healthcare portion has more than doubled. It's 102% increase. If you look at this line here, family, it used to cost us $11,265 for the premiums. It now costs $22,774. So part of that, in fact, you know, a chunk of that is because we're sort of our own worst enemies. We've got the greatest healthcare coverage, and so we're not sharing that burden with others. It's completely on the town taxpayers. I think we have 13 employees who have healthcare insurance. There are about 30 some odd insured individuals. There is no one, no other employer who is contributing to that burden. It's all on the town taxpayer.
What do you mean, no other employer?
Teresa, if you have questions, could I finish the
Sure,
the
I'm sorry.
presentation and then you
This
can-
is just something that I'm learning about tonight.
Yeah.
Usually I've had a little bit of heads up with the discussion on the healthcare. So I will hold my questions till the end,
Yeah.
and I have a few things to say to the board.
Okay, good. So, the burden is falling on the town taxpayers for essentially all this cost of coverage. So at the next chart, so here are some things we can consider. first of all, we know we want to provide excellent health care for our employees. It's really why they work here, because of the benefits. The pay isn't that great. It's not to say that it's not, that it's nothing, but it's not great. We recognize that our employees work here primarily for the benefits, and we need to continue to provide them top-notch health care coverage, and we need to essentially pay for most of that. We recognize that. But we do need to consider these things. One is, if employees, if their spouses work somewhere where that coverage is offered, we really need to ask that they either take that coverage or compensate for the difference between a single and a double. Because it's not, again, it's not really fair to the town taxpayer to absorb all of that cost. This will also help rebalance some of that. For folks whose spouses or partners are not offered health care at their place of employment, we recognize that we have individuals, and we'll have folks that we'll hire who'll be in that situation. We should consider at least a small contribution from those individuals. What other townships have done, which I think is a good solution to that issue, is to fully fund single coverage, but ask for a small contribution of the difference between single and double or single and family. And I think something like a 15% contribution may be a reasonable suggestion. And that is something that I think the town of Pauling has this policy. Co-pays and deductibles, we pay all of it, no matter how high it is. I think we do need to have some cap on it, and so we consider a cap that still funds almost all of it, but allows some contribution, some sharing of the cost exposure with the employees. And so something like putting a cap for a single on $3,000, the town taxpayers would pay the co-pays and the deductibles for $3,000 for a single plan, or $6,000 for a married or a family plan. This will make it better for us to be able to estimate the maximum cost, and will also help us continue to offer health insurance for our employees, because at $33,000 a year increase, this is not sustainable. We'll have to move towards things like looking at staffing levels, and we know we don't want to do that. We can, however, give employees greater flexibility in making the healthcare decisions if we give them some options. So if they are in that situation, for example, where they're contributing a little bit to the difference between single and married or family, we could still offer 100% payment of the premium, but with a lower HRA level. So here's an example up there on the screen. If an employee is required to contribute 15% of the difference between single and family, that's $1,232. Towards family coverage, that would be about $184 a month. We would allow them the opportunity to still have the town pay 100% of the family premiums, but they would be entitled to a lower HRA reimbursement amount. So again, in that family situation, they would get 100% premium paid, $3,800 towards any of their co-pays and deductibles that they would encounter during the year. And then the other thing we should consider is we should consider offering a robust buyout option. And then maybe some employees will choose to go with the spouse's coverage, in which case there'll be some sharing of this burden. It won't be entirely on the town taxpayer. And so I would suggest something robust like $8,000 for family coverage if they took it elsewhere, $7,000 for double, and $4,000 for single. And that will give more options. We have, the town has been decreasing their contribution towards retiree health benefits. We've been warned by the comptroller's office. This is a looming financial bomb going on. Municipalities are not in a position to really continue that coverage. We are going to soon be asked to put aside funds and start making assumptions about how long we're going to have to pay that coverage. Right now there are lots of other affordable options for retirees. The New York State of Health Plan is one of them. If you make below a certain income level, $48,000, you can get a really terrific, very comparable plan for $0 to $20 a month. And that's something that folks at home, if you're watching, if that's your income level, that's something you may want to take a look at. The New York State of Health Plan. Okay, so those are some things that we could consider. I think if we adopt all of these recommendations, we would be in a position where we could address just about everybody's health needs. And I think there'll be very few people who will have expenses after this policy. There will probably be a couple, but there'll be a lot more flexibility for the employees, and we'll have a better protection for the taxpayer against future increases. We won't have to come back to this issue for years, at least several years, with these safeguards in place. So, and I'll put that here. This is called the Essential Plan for folks at home, not just for employees who may retire, but things that you would want to know because you're a New York State resident. You get the coverage, it's between $0 and $20 a month. You can't beat it. It's MVP, there's a couple of other carriers. And there's the income thresholds for this year. There's no deductible. You get free preventive care. Okay. Does the board have questions, and then we'll get to Teresa and questions?
I actually have a question. So I've been trying to get up to speed on this and doing some research and reading things. So on the discussion of putting a cap on the HRA
Yes.
portion, is it, I believe I also read that the comptroller's office recommends this type of approach too, right? As well as for the retirement things.
There are
Because you have to, because my understanding is we have to budget for the full utilization amount.
We do.
Even if we don't use, even if people
That's
aren't
right.
using it. And then that contributes to the whole issue of the property tax cap, the 2% issue, right?
That's exactly right. We need to budget for 100% utilization, and that obviously you see by those numbers here. Those are very different numbers now. You know, when it was just 1,250 or 2,500 in 2013 and 14, and even frankly in 15, they weren't huge numbers, but now they've essentially, excuse me, tripled. So yes, we have to budget that, and different municipalities do it different ways. Like the town of Rhinebeck just instituted where they have their employees pay the first 1,000 of that in order to get some buy-in into cost containment. They have them actually do the first, and I'm not comfortable with that because I don't want our employees to be in a position to think twice if they have one incident where they want to go to the doctor or whatever, where they, I'm more comfortable paying the first
Setting
portion
amount.
of it, a set amount, and leave that to the very end. So what I think you'll see from a package of reforms that's there is that actually many of the employees won't be paying anything towards their health care because they fit under those guidelines. So their HRA utilization is not more than $3,800, or if it is, it's barely over that. And we've looked at that as well. So it's just a different way to look at it, and there's also different options for them. And if we do get some employees who want to take advantage of the buyout and go on the spouses or the partners coverage, that only benefits us because we're representing the taxpayers who are right now essentially sharing very little with anybody, if any. So, any other questions?
There's a lot to think about. I'm wondering what is, sort of per Teresa's concern, what's the plan for presenting this to employees? Do we, the town board, first decide what we want to do and then it gets presented, or?
If I could.
How does that?
Yeah, well, we need to know like which direction we want to go in, and then we can speak to the employees about it, but we need to have some idea, yeah?
I really need to say a few things about the way this process has been going this year. And it started at the budget meeting in October. And we were sitting here at the budget meeting and looking at the insurance figures. And at that point in time, the increase in what you were budgeting for the insurance was 3%. And I questioned that. I said, typically, the increase in the insurance is more than 3%. And there was no answer to that. But I was told at that time, don't worry about it. Things are going to remain the same. Nothing is going to change. So there was no continued discussion 4 months ago about this insurance. Now, you have to make a decision for a plan by the end of this month. In past years, the highway superintendent was present for insurance discussions. I haven't been present at anything at all until tonight. I have the biggest group of insured people. I know what they're going to go through if this plan changes today. Now, I don't have any problem with discussing it, but I think to spring it on someone at this late date, you don't understand what impact that's going to have. There's been no discussion with the staff about changing the policy and no discussion with me about changing the policy. Making a decision without involving those who it will impact most deeply and directly, I don't feel is good policy. And it's not just my staff, it's the deputy clerk, the town clerk. I don't think the board has had enough time and information to make a fully informed decision. If this is the first time we're discussing insurance and you're laying this whole menu out and you're expecting an answer, even a month seems to me very hasty. The staff has had no chance to explore alternatives or understand how this is going to impact them, or put money aside if they're going to need it. Yeah, there are a few who go right through their deduction. And they know they're going to have to take that money out of their pocket this year if you change right now. We don't know what the options are. We haven't had a chance to evaluate past history for usage for the employees. I don't think you see a true picture if you don't put the utilization rate in there, which right now may be as low as 60%. And whatever isn't utilized goes towards the health insurance the next year. I feel that opinions, discussion, and negotiation with all staff that count on this benefit as part of their package are in order. The issue should have been addressed at budget time and not be rushed into at the last minute. No one has had time to evaluate it. The Village of Red Hook shares our building. The Village of Red Hook has fully funded health insurance. The Village of Red Hook has a higher wage than we do. We're in the same building. The Village of Red Hook has this in their contract. I'm the negotiator for the people in my department, and I haven't had a chance until this time to say anything about any of this. And I don't feel that's fair. Some of the people in my crew have been there for over 20 years. Over half of them are making less than $47,000 gross, with overtime. This is going to have an impact on them. And I think you really have to think about it. There's not much I can do except to tell you that there's a lot of information missing here. And a lot of it comes from the people that this is going to affect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just for the record, yes, we looked at the utilization rates, and that was factored into some of the recommendations. So we had that information. We don't put that information up for public viewing. That's employee information. Yeah, we oftentimes find ourselves in the situation where we are trying to figure out how to solve an issue. We had no idea we'd be facing a 15% increase.
Well, that's why I brought it up at the budget meeting, because the typical increase has been a minimum of 9%.
I will tell you, however, had we known it was going to be 15%, we would still want to start to see some things like some contribution on behalf of the employees, some sharing of this healthcare coverage from spouses who are offered insurance at their workplace.
I'm not arguing with that. I'm
Okay.
arguing with the timing.
Well, we do as best as we can to put things together. We don't have this in the budget. We have to figure out a way to address this, and yes, it's not how we would have preferred to do it, to take a look at it, but we tried to address all of the situations that you referenced, and I think that when we do get a chance to sit down, your employees will see that this will have minimal or no impact on them, especially in the highway department.
When are they going to sit down?
And I'm prepared to do that in the next day or two with some guidance from you, because we need to, let me finish first.
You
We
don't
need
even
to-
have an option. Most employers have an enrollment period. You cannot go to re-enroll in a different health policy now, 2 months from now. They go from year to year. They start 3 or 4 months ahead of time with options. You can't just go over, expect people to switch. They
No.
can't. It's not an option.
John, there's something called a qualifying event, and so.
Yeah, if you get fired or whatever, you can't not just because if you choose to lose your coverage.
No,
Then
it's a
yes.
qualifying event if you get your coverage through a spouse's place of employment
Yes.
instead of here. That's called the qualifying event. You can get that immediately. Okay?
Actually, Robert, I did actually also have a question about the timing for retired coverage.
Right, so we
So
would
for, I'm
continue that
assuming we
for,
have people who are retired who are on coverage, right? So when would that,
2019, so that would end this year, and then that would take the few retirees we have. All of them would be Medicare eligible at that point.
So this item number 5, proposal essentially is no new people as of retirement on insurance. And for anybody who's retired and currently getting insurance, would finish out the year.
What is the current insurance retirement policy now? Because I know that that was a discussion that we had a couple of years ago about people counting on having the benefit when they're retiring.
Yes, I understand that, Teresa, but you have to understand when those policies were put in place, nobody anticipated in 6 years that the health care costs would be more than double. And so the policy varies. If you are here for X amount of years and you retire at a certain age, you get a certain percentage paid for it. If you are here for longer than that and you are another age, you get a certain percentage.
And is that going to change?
Yes, and I'm suggesting that we don't have any way of paying that benefit going forward. We just don't have it.
So that's totally off the book.
So there was a policy that if someone was 55 and they retired with 30 years in, that part of their insurance would be paid by the town until Medicaid kicked in. Is that going to still be there or not?
No, that is not proposed to still be there. One, because there's no funds for it. We are at the moment not funding all of the eligible people for health care. If we get somebody coming in here, for example, working a full-time job that doesn't have coverage and needs coverage, we don't have any room for that.
Well, we don't have any detail right now on the retirement plan, do we? On the retirement plan changes, I just see, it just says discontinue, that's it?
Yeah, that's it.
So what you're essentially gonna make people do,
That's what it says.
they have 30 years and they're 55, you're just gonna force them to work till they're 65 years old. And the town's gonna pay them till they're 65.
That benefit was an incentive
That's why
for
we're here.
people to retire at a certain age after they had a certain amount of years so that they would be able to retire after 30 years.
And I think we only have one individual who would be in that situation, or two individuals in our workforce who is
At this date,
at this date, yes. So this plan here, which is available to all New Yorkers, okay, $0 to $20 per month,
at the age of 55?
absolutely. The essential plan, yeah.
And what's the income?
49,000 or less if you're a family of 4.
Who's gonna fall under
Family
that?
of 4.
Yeah. Who's got a family of 4 when they're semi-retired and makes under that?
If you're retired, we're talking about retired now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's got a family of 4 when you're retired? Number 1.
Well, 2 at 32,000 or less.
Anyhow, that was all part of the deal when you came to work in this place, was that you had that benefit. That's what we would work for. And you're just gonna take it away just like that.
I think we would need more, I don't see any analysis here of what the cost to the town is of that retirement plan, and I think we would need that.
We do have that.
Where is
We can
that
share
in the
with you.
packet?
It's not in the packet.
That's
but
what I'm
we
saying,
can
in the
share that.
packet, it's not
Yeah.
here.
Well,
But that,
Well, we can certainly, that's not until next year thing, so we
yeah,
can
that's
table
not
that.
an immediate thing.
But immediately, we do need to pick a plan, and we didn't see any savings with, and we certainly can go to a weaker plan. It didn't seem to do the job, to go to a weaker plan and a higher deductible. Certainly, we can't afford to fund more deductibles than we're funding now.
So again, why was this not discussed at budget time, and why was I assured that things were going to stay the same?
I don't know why you had the feeling that things were going to stay the same.
Because you told me so, Robert.
No.
I was here myself.
Sorry.
I have a witness.
Said right
I'm
there.
sorry.
There were people here, I questioned it, and you said to me, nobody has what you have. Things are gonna stay the same. We're not changing anything.
I'm sorry, I don't recall that conversation.
Well, that's why I'm so
We
upset.
have a simple reality, which is we are at the point where we can't fund it.
Does the funding for the employees in the highway department come out of the DB fund or the A fund?
It comes out of the DB fund.
Okay, so is there money in the DB fund to cover this year?
No, our existing policy, no.
There's nothing.
There's not enough money to cover it. It's a $33,000 increase.
Yeah, $33,000. So there was $18,000 from surplus equipment last year that's going into the reserve fund for the highway department. How much went into the reserve fund at the end of the year from the regular budget?
We don't know.
You don't know that, but there's
We don't.
money there. There's at least $33,000 there.
The DB fund does not run, it runs at a deficit now already.
No, it doesn't. We have not gone over budget in the DB fund this past year with our spending.
Well, we'll see when the books are closed, but the budget for the last couple of years has transfers into the DB fund in order to balance the budget.
Yeah,
That's
because
gonna be-
there are things being taken out.
Okay.
If it were my choice, and there were enough money in the DB fund to fund it for one more year, and then come forward with all of the changes that you want to make in a timely fashion, that would be my preference. We've been talking about this for over 2 or 3 years, and nobody has ever said anything. And now at the last minute, 2 weeks before you have to choose your plan, or a week before, you want to change policy as well as plan. I don't think that's fair.
There's no change in plan. There's no change in the plan proposed.
But it's a dramatic change in the policies.
Actually, it's not that dramatic a change in the policy because every employee will be allowed 100% payment of the premium. The only thing that will vary is whether or not they are allocated $3,800 towards their co-pays and deductibles or allowed $6,000 towards that. That is essentially the difference in what's being proposed, and there's buyout option, which actually may benefit some employees over what they have now.
So is that proposal with the $3,500, $6,000, is that going to make up your $33,000 difference?
This is going to, all of these proposals will make up enough of the difference that we can fund
So,
this.
but you're going to have to switch if your spouse has an insurance plan, then you have to put money in?
Yes, you have to put money in. If your spouse is offered insurance, and that seems only reasonable because the town taxpayers are now funding not only the individuals who aren't covered, but the individuals who have coverage elsewhere.
And what if the coverage elsewhere is also funded by the town taxpayers?
Well, some of that may be the case.
It is the case. It is the case for people who have spouses who work in the school district.
Right. Well, this will reduce the overall burden to the taxpayer.
Well, and I think we should also make it, in my position, in my thinking on this is, I'm not approaching this from where people's spouses or partners work or don't work. So I don't know where people, if some people work for the school district, as you happen to bring up or not. So, and I, in my career and in my current place where I work, we have these discussions every year, and plans change every year, costs change every year.
In the private sector.
Options change every year.
In the private sector.
Actually, the plans, the coverage are changing in every township. The Rhinebeck change I mentioned to you, every township is dealing with this and making changes, including the Village of Red Hook that you referenced, making changes to their plans because they cannot afford these increases.
The biggest issue that I have with this is the way that it's been brought forward.
And I wish we had more time.
We did have more
to
time,
address it.
and you cannot deny that.
We just met with the healthcare brokers last week, of which promptly there afterwards, both he and I got the flu. We're doing as best as we can to try to address this, to provide excellent coverage, including, as I will say, most everybody who's covered now will still get 100% coverage with these and have additional options, and they may choose to go in a different direction and accept the buyout and go with the.
So when do we have to make this choice?
We have to make a choice, just like we have to make a choice on the plan. We have to do it by next week.
We don't have to, we're gonna have to figure out all this policy by next week and figure out what it means to us.
Very simply, or not, you can just remain with the plan and get $3,800 towards your deductible. If the options that are laid out for you are there's not enough time for you to consider them in a well thought out manner, understood. But this increase has necessitated that we ask that there be a small cost share, and we're in that position where we don't have a choice. We cannot continue with this policy, and that's what all the other municipalities are dealing with right now. And then we know that this is stressful, but what's being laid out here for you is going to affect very few people because it's 100% premium coverage with what is, in almost all cases, enough HRA, but not every case, reimbursement.
I'm wondering,
And we do need to make a decision this week because we have to sign up.
because of the really, that is a really short deadline, and I'm not happy about making a decision that affects so many people with so little notice to them. I'm wondering, although I do actually think most of these policies may be a good fit for Red Hook, but I guess I'm wondering if we could compromise by perhaps putting in place number 3, the cap on the HRA portion, which is a fairly straightforward thing for people to wrap their minds around, and keep our plan as is laid out here, and then have more of an open, longer discussion with employees with the intention of adopting the rest of the, or at least considering the rest of the policies, because
There isn't money
I'm
in the
not
budget.
sure.
There isn't money in the budget for that.
But there isn't any reserve for, $33,000 in our budget is not really, it's not an insurmountable amount if you look at the budget and the reserve funds.
Well, again, I'm the new kid on the block, but reviewing past information, and as was mentioned, I guess this has been discussed for 2 to 3 years now?
Not these policies.
No,
These
but
policies haven't been
making
discussed.
changes to
No,
the formulas.
It's been touched on and never discussed.
And there
Never
were,
discussed, never discussed.
actually,
This is the first time we've had this menu of choices. This is the first time I've seen them today.
we have made changes to the policy in 2011. The healthcare policy was changed by the board at that time. Was for some reason never implemented and included cost shares. That was in December of 2011, 15% contribution, I believe it was. That resolution.
So when do we have to decide, and how many days do we have between now and then when we can meet with Teresa?
Well, we have essentially a week.
Why don't we start meeting tomorrow?
We need to make a decision.
I know that there's money in the highway DD budget that would cover this difference. And I know that you have to choose a plan.
Yes. we
And
have-
I'm just flabbergasted because this is totally unexpected. There's been no
Let's sit down and
notice,
talk
there's
about
been
it and
no nothing, no talk about it, no preparation, no conversation with the department head, nothing. That's the issue I have, not the concept.
Okay.
Can I just clarify the timing? So
Yeah.
if we don't make a decision tonight on any changes,
Well-
right, beyond selecting a plan can happen without a town board meeting.
No, we'll need to schedule
Okay.
another meeting for next week then.
So
If we'd
then,
like
so
to
do
get
we
more
have enough
information.
time to advertise a meeting and still have
Yeah.
the meeting
Yeah.
and make the decision before
Yeah.
the deadline for
We
the
can
plan?
schedule a meeting for a week from today and make a decision at that time. Would that work?
I just don't think that's the amount of time employees would need to figure out if this really is a qualifying event for them, if their spouse's coverage is better. I'm still concerned about the window of time. I think there's no reason we couldn't have discussed these policies without knowing the numbers well ahead of time, and personally, I'd be more comfortable, like I said, maybe placing a cap on the HRA portion so that we know what our expenses are going to be. But then discussing the rest of these, which are they're more complicated for people to analyze in their own personal budgets. What would be better to go with their spouse's plan or their plan, and what would it mean to take the buyout versus keeping the plan, and all of those things. Same with the retirement change. I think we need a lot more discussion of that, so I would be more comfortable doing the cap and waiting on the rest of it for more discussion, but.
Well,
Okay,
let's
I
say
guess
you wanna
I'm-
have another meeting next Wednesday, yep. And we'll talk with the employees between now and next Wednesday. And we'll determine,
What's the plan for talking with them?
Well,
'Cause I
what
think
would you recommend, please?
we don't have it in the budget.
I made my
to-
recommendation.
Yeah.
Sarah's
No, but
made
your
her
main concern was
recommendation.
the process, so if we slow down a little bit and maybe start the process tomorrow, so we can have more dialogue and understanding, and then make a more informed decision in a week, wouldn't that be better?
Who's gonna be informed?
Well, no.
You seem to already be pre-informed.
Well, no.
We're just getting this information. It's a lot to sort through.
Well, if it's too much by next week, then I don't know what we'll do, but I mean, at least it's better than where we stand right now,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, usually, I don't know, when my husband's workplace changes their plans every year it's worse for us. But usually we get at least a month to look at our budget and figure out which plan we want. In that situation, we get to choose from a number of different ones.
They do have a month.
So, yeah,
It
so
starts
you-
March 1st.
Right.
No.
It starts March 1st,
You have to pick a plan by the end of this month.
yes. And we can do that. We can pick a plan. Yeah. It's March 1st for enrollment, so they don't have to,
But
and the enrollment period goes all the way up to February 17th. So there's plenty of time to consider some of these things and whether or not, they would prefer to have a buyout or prefer to go with
my
spouses.
recommendation would be to make it simple and go forward from this point. Leave the plan the way it is for this year. If it's in the budget, that you can find the funds to continue what you've done for the past 20 years, one more year, and then make your decisions with the employees, discussions, negotiations, options. That's what I would do. I find this to be very, very upsetting, and I don't see that there's any reason that this had to be presented this way, and that's my strong opinion. Because at budget time, I brought it up, and it was ignored.
Okay, well,
So can I
We-
say,
yep.
there's another sheet here which is the suggestion for the plan to adopt, is that right? 'Cause I don't know if you have that one.
No,
In the handouts?
there's just a comparison of
So
the,
the
This
renewal
current year-
plan?
renewal plan, that's all
Right.
it is, to show that the cost, the $33,000 with 15% increase. That's all it is, it's just a comparison. Yeah.
So if the utilization comes in at 60 or 75% instead of 100%, does that lower that $33,000 cost?
No,
No?
no. $33,000 cost increase happens, no matter what the utilization is.
That's the
Because
premium.
it's the premium that's gone up 33%, the HRA has not gone up. It's a $33,000 guaranteed increase in the costs, and we represent all the town taxpayers. And it's difficult to justify why we continue to do 100% when there are other options available for coverage. There are other employees who are not sharing in that coverage. And part of the problem is we continue year after year, although the policy was changed that employees should be paying 15% back in 2011.
That, I believe that was new employees?
For new employees, yes, for new employees.
It was 10%.
No, it's 15.
No, that was, this is a different,
For
this is a
15%.
different resolution. It has nothing to do with the policies that we have in place. It has to do with new hires, which is another way to
Well,
reduce your costs
Well,
in the future.
we do have new hires, and we understand we could just address new hires, but we have to explain to the taxpayer why we are spending $32,000 or upwards of $32,000 a year for covering employees and their families when there are other employers out there who should be sharing in that expense. And that is something that we are charged with. And there is no, yes, we can pull money from reserves. We've been pulling money from reserves. This is unsustainable, and the way it's set up with these options is that most everybody will be 100% paid for their coverage and their utilization. But we will not be the single entity that is shouldering this burden. We cannot do it. We cannot do it on behalf of the town taxpayers when there are other employers out there offering, and because we had such a pristine, perfect, you don't have to pay anything plan, it's hurting those taxpayers. Because nobody would choose their spouse's plan when they have this as an option. And that's not fair to the town taxpayer. Now with the buyout, there's an opportunity there that they could take a look at and see what that spouse's plan is and say, okay, maybe I'm gonna go this way because I can get a buyout out of this amount, and the burden, some of the burden can be relieved from the town taxpayer. And I think it will work well for the employees because there's a lot of options there. Especially with the employees that are, I mean, we have employees that are Medicare eligible, who now with the buyout can afford to have terrific coverage. That's all personal decisions they can make. But in the meantime, if they don't feel that they have enough time to do anything different, I understand that. We didn't have a lot of time to consider this. We didn't get answers to these questions until just days ago. All they simply need to do is stick with the plan, and they will get a lower, or I should say a cap on their HRA allotment. That's the only difference that is guaranteed to happen to any of the employees. They can take it the next year.
So what is the total deductible?
Again, if they want to have the town pay 100%, if they're a family, if they're a single person, they will have 100% of their premium paid for, and $3,000 of the $3,700 deductible will be paid for them. They are only risking the potential of paying $700, okay? If they are married and they, or family, and they want us to pay 100%, they will get $3,800 of co-pays and deductibles paid for them, 100%.
If they're married and,
Married or family coverage, they will have 100% of that premium paid for, and the first $3,800 of co-pays and deductibles.
what is the deductible on a married plan?
$7,400 is the maximum.
So they'd have 7,400 as a deductible and they'd get 3,400 paid for?
3,800.
3,800, so that leaves them on the hook for the other 3,800?
If they go that high, if they go 100%
And is that
utilization.
pre-tax dollars that they can pay with? Or is that after-tax dollars?
They can contribute, we already have an employee who contributes to an FSA, so if they feel that $3,800 is not enough,
But
they
I
can
thought
have-
it was a different figure for married than single. I thought you said $6,000.
Yes, again, the 6,000 would be the cap if they contribute 15% of the difference between single and married. If they would prefer not to pay
And
that.
this is what the problem is that there's not clarity for us, without being able to understand all of this, compare it to other plans, figure out if we're going to be able to utilize an FSA, see what our history has been in utilization. We don't have those figures at our fingertips.
All of that stuff will be given, I think they
So-
actually, you all do get that stuff, you know what you use for your utilization.
So if
Employees.
you're married on this plan,
Yes,
you would still be on the hook for 15% of your spouses?
if you are married on this plan, again, there are two options. If you don't wanna pay the 15% contribution for in excess of single, the town will continue to pay 100% of the family plan, but you will, instead of getting 6,000, you will get $3,800 credit towards your HRA.
What's
It's very
15%?
It comes
What's
to,
15% of the spouses?
it comes to that difference. So, that's up there,
The $184.
$184.80 or $2,200, so that's the difference between 6,000 and 3,800. So if there's not enough time, again, to consider all the other options, and if they would benefit you above and beyond what you currently have, every employee, regardless of their situation, would have family coverage and $3,800 towards HRA.
And if they put the $3,800 in an FSA and they don't utilize it this year, where does that $3,800 go?
No, the town is paying the co-pays and deductible up to $3,800.
That still leaves another $3,800.
That leaves
for this.
$3,600 potentially if somebody needed to have full utilization of co-pays and deductibles, yes. So very
So
simply,
that would be in an FSA as well?
you could choose, an employee can choose, if they for some reason know something's coming down the pipe for that year where they're gonna need full utilization, they can choose to have pre-tax dollars add on to that $3,800 to go higher. Most of the employees do not need to have higher than that amount for their co-pays and deductibles. So there'll be no change, and most of them will pay nothing towards their health care still with these constraints. So yes, you may want more time to consider those other options, but you will still have 100% premium payment, and you will still have a very generous copay and deductible allowance going forward.
But the people who have full utilization every year will get about a 6% cut in their take-home pay because they'll be paying that difference.
Not necessarily, because we don't know what the buyout option does for them. They may in fact
if they don't have a buyout option, if their spouse doesn't have health care options, and this is the only thing that they have, then that's what it turns out to be.
Yeah, and I don't think we have anybody who's utilized it to the maximum each year, but yes, theoretically that could happen. Yeah, but with $3,800, that still means that the town is paying over $28,000 towards that family coverage.
And that's why there's a big difference between municipality and private sector, because in the municipality situation, you're making $20 an hour, but you can depend on the benefits, because you can't depend on the 5% and 6% raises that were given years past. You're lucky to get 2%. We're all struggling with the tax cap. The only thing we have to depend on is those benefits.
Yes, but all municipalities are changing, and
Not
again,
all, though.
I will tell you.
Those municipalities with contracts
And they're not
get to
taking
keep
the
their full benefits.
retiree
I'm
health
sorry.
benefits away either.
All the municipalities with or without union contracts, they're all changing their health care reimbursement. All of them have, and I've got, you know, all the lists of the municipalities. Pauling again, has a similar proposal, 85%.
And-
They're actually, it's
and
more
there
expensive.
again, it's not the full picture without looking at the wage.
We have the wages for all that.
Yeah, and I have them too, and they're always different. I'm not saying anymore. I've made my case if that's not enough. I know that it's not my decision, but I'm the advocate for my crew, and that's why I'm speaking about it.
Okay.
And for every other person that gets health care in the town. If you want to discuss it, that's fine. I just think that there's been no preparation whatsoever, and I think there's been plenty of time to prepare, and that's what's really bothering me about this.
Okay.
And
Well,
that's it.
okay, well, thank you. But again, I will say to you, we had our meeting with our healthcare brokers last week, and so we had a whole host of questions that we needed answered in order to try to figure out how to address it. And
And this was his first year that I wasn't included in that type of meeting.
well, I am sorry I wasn't aware of that. Okay. Here's where we are. I'm okay with choosing a plan, or we can wait a week. We can address this deficit with putting a cap on the HRA. If you want more time to discuss some of these other recommendations, we could do a cap of $3,000 for single, $3,800 for family, keep it the same plan.
I think we should meet next week.
Meet
Let
next week.
everybody talk about it some more, get
Get
Harry
another
involved.
week.
And
Okay.
hopefully have you meet with the highway
Employees.
superintendent and
Okay.
select employees.
All right, let's choose a time next week.
Well, that's just my thought, I don't know what
I think if
everybody
we're
else.
gonna wait a week, then I think we need a process for discussing with the employees, and I think we need a process for collecting like anonymous feedback, like a comment box or some way that people can tell us what they think of the policies without, you know, feeling like they're putting themselves out on the
Okay.
line.
That's fine. That's
And
fine.
I think the process should be open to the full board, but, you know, maybe we can't have the full board meeting, but I think the board needs to hear the feedback from employees as directly as possible, so I'm not sure how we manage that, but I do think it's important that we all hear that some way, whether in writing or,
Well, why don't we give them a form or something where they can give us some feedback on these proposals?
and maybe a box or some way to,
Sure.
I don't know. But
Can anybody sit down around a table and start talking tomorrow? Is that available?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd rather have Harry there as the liaison.
Well, he's not unfortunately healthy at the moment, which is why he's not here tonight, unfortunately.
So we'll find out if he's feeling any better and if he's available sometime this week.
Okay.
I just think you should start tomorrow, because it may take a few days to meet.
Okay.
If you know, if the administration is that firm about how positive some of this is, hopefully that discussion would influence some of your attitude and your reaction to this short notice. And if that works, that would be good, if we could reach some common ground before next week.
Okay.
Harry, you know, I mean, he could pick up on it after 2 or 3 days. He may need another couple of days to get better, but
Are you going to be able to have the insurance people here explaining, or who's going to be doing the explaining of the facts and figures? And who's going to be the point person for getting us all the past information that we need?
Ann and I can arrange for that. I've been with the insurance people much of the last week trying to get answers, so all of those questions, I'm sure the questions that they have are the questions that I have, because I was trying to look at it from the employee perspective, so. Okay.
How does this usually get communicated to the rest of the employees besides Teresa's crew? Like by email, or is there an in-person meeting, or how do
I think we
employees
had
usually?
a memo. There's a memo issued around this time each year on healthcare, but
And is that how they'll hear about the rest of these policy? I mean, part of the problem is that they don't know how the board's going to act on the rest of the policies, so that may, affect.
why don't we start with an explanation of the recommendations here and a discussion with the employees so they can address that and see where we go from there. And we can provide them with utilization statistics if they want to see what their utilization has been. And see if there's some recommendations. Okay. Does next Wednesday work for the meeting to address this?
Christine?
Works for me, the 31st works for me.
Okay,
Let's go with me.
make it at 7:30. All right. So we will note there'll be a special meeting of the Red Hook Town Board, January 31st at 7:30 p.m. to discuss healthcare further. All right. Thank you very much. Moving on to reports. Tonight.
Do you have copies of that?
I have nothing.
Is it in the packet on the table? Or?
We will give copies to everybody in advance of getting together so they can see and read about it. All right, board reports.
Can I just ask one question? Was this information distributed before this meeting to the board members?
We don't discuss the information that we distributed amongst ourselves, but yes, it has been distributed to board members.
Okay.
Board reports, okay. Zoning Board of Appeals, Bill?
Are we not going over the cemetery or the Association of Towns stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Or,
Yeah, we will. You want to tackle that now? Yeah. So we had 13 resolutions that are up for consideration at the Association of Towns.
We should get everything back up. 6.
Okay. Did you all have any questions about the resolutions before they get voted on? Are you comfortable supporting them? Are there ones you're not comfortable with?
I'm comfortable with all of them.
You are, okay. Any other questions? Christine, you okay with that?
No.
Very good. So that will be on Wednesday. February 20th, I think it is, with the voting of those resolutions. All right, we also have discussion on Red Church Cemetery. So what we have tonight is a draft resolution just for you to consider, not to vote on. We're not ready to vote, but it's a resolution acknowledging the abandonment of the Red Church Cemetery and agreeing to accept whatever assets there are. Are there any questions about that?
Well, I'm not totally up to speed on this,
Yeah, true.
so I have more stuff to read
Okay.
to catch up on this.
I just gave Christine today a copy of all the materials that we distributed last year to
Okay.
the rest of the board when we were discussing this with the Cemetery Corporation. So
Okay.
give her a chance to catch up on that.
Okay. All right, and
If you want to give me a call after you
We'll
After
be-
I read through them.
we're sort of planning for a March resolution. To accept this resolution, we'll hopefully have all the information from the folks who are operating the cemetery association. All right. That's number 4, and I think we're at the point where we have our board reports. Bill, we have a ZBA report if you could
Well, the
comment on
ZBA met in January and they had one public hearing. Bard College had applied for an area variance for an existing residence. And that public hearing was held, and at the end of that public hearing, the meeting was adjourned until Wednesday, February 14th.
Okay. Very good. Sarah, we have a Red Hook monthly dog report.
All right. So I have November and December here.
Okay.
We had 2 dangerous dog or related incidents for November and 8 loose dogs, 1 nuisance dog and 1 wildlife or cat report. 1 dog was impounded and 1 dog was reclaimed, so that's good. Just glancing over these complaints, a lot of it again is dogs getting loose, and usually when a dog is reclaimed, it's in part due to the microchip, so definitely consider if you have a dog, keep it safely confined and microchip if you want it easily returned to you. In December, we had 1 dangerous dog report and 3 loose dog and related, and 1 wildlife or cat report, bringing our yearly totals to 21 dangerous dog or related, 50 loose dog, and 8 nuisance dog, and 5 wildlife or cat incidents. Only 2 dogs impounded, both of whom were reclaimed, so that's good.
Okay.
That's it.
Great. Bill, we have an assessor's report.
Well, the assessor for the past month has been processing enhanced STAR senior and ag renewals. They're also been in touch with Dutchess County regarding the town's level of assessment. And the main goal for that is to keep the town at 100% equalization rate. During December, there were a total of 10 sales. The highest price was $666,600 for single-family residence, and the lowest was for a vacant lot for $45,000. And the assessor's work is continuing.
Okay. very much, Christine. We have a report, it's actually the annual report, I believe, from the building department.
Okay, so this is the total for 2017. Number of building permits issued, 241, and building inspections conducted, 272. COs and other compliance issues were 267, and then there were 87 separate complaints that were dealt with. And just over $55,500 in fees from building permits and $9,700 from municipal searches, so that's a total of $65,235 in income, in fees collected.
Great. Bill, we have a highway department report, since Harry isn't here.
Well, the highway department end of the year report for 2017.
Hello,
You want to do it?
I would like to.
Okay,
ahead.
great, go ahead. Oh, this is the year-end report, Teresa,
Yes.
thank you, yeah.
And I usually do the highway department reports when I'm here, because that's one of the reasons I come.
Okay.
Highway Department end of year report for 2017. We installed or reinstalled over 50 speed limit signs in compliance with the MUTCD regulations. We installed a total of 1,250 feet of culvert pipe in 11 locations on town roads. We cleaned our roadside ditches with the mini excavator on 16 town roads, mowed the equivalent of 350 miles of road shoulders, cut, chipped up, and removed 67 dead trees, performed 108 vehicle repairs in-house, swept town roads of excess sand and debris over the course of 3 weeks in the spring, cold patched potholes on 83 town roads, cut and chipped roadside brush on 20 town roads, ground numerous tree stumps at 10 locations throughout the town, contracted capital improvement paving for Mill Road, 1.18 miles, paved Oriole Mills Road and Williams Road with a rental paver and the town crew, 1.55 miles, disposed of 6 pieces of surplus equipment generating $18,000 in revenue, and responded to 18 winter storm events with a material and labor cost of $270,959. For shared services for the town hall, we installed a dry well and pipe for the gutter system in front of the town hall. We installed the new electric vehicle charging stations in the town hall parking lot. We maintained landscaping beds, trees, and gardens at the town hall, cleared the parking lot and sidewalks of snow and ice during the winter season, and performed building maintenance at town hall as needed. For the rec park, we hauled material. For the water department, we blacktopped road cuts and maintained the water department facility roads. St. Margaret's, we ground the tree stumps on the lawn. The town recycling center, we graded the parking lot to eliminate potholes, participated in the e-waste recycling event, and plowed the parking lot after snowstorms. For the Red Hook Central Schools, we swept the parking lots in the spring. For the village of Tivoli, we hauled sand for winter operations, swept the streets of excess sand in spring, swept streets for the annual street painting event. Community events that the highway department participated in, we volunteered for Miles for Mac event and Rogers Run. And we also participated in a pilot program for DPW software, partnering with the town of Fishkill and the New York State Department of State.
Okay. Thank you very much, Teresa. Bill, we have a police department report.
Yes, the police department for the past month had a total of 101 incidents reported. Of that, they had a total of 10 arrests and issued 37 tickets during the reporting period, which was December of 2017.
Okay, very good. Sarah, we have a purchasing department report. It's got your name on it.
Yeah, I'll give this in place of Harry. During the period December 20th to January 23rd, there were 31 purchase orders issued in the amount of $21,161.85. The largest was $8,786.85 to Appalachian Marine for road salt. That was a piggyback contract with Dutchess County. In the meantime, Weston and Sampson engineers have reviewed the Challenger field requirements and recreation park plans and submitted a proposal which is being evaluated. The carpeting in the town hall was cleaned during this period, good job by Pollards. They've started working on RFP for a vendor to install foam insulation in town hall, and 3 bids came back on the LED streetlights project, which are being reviewed for action. That's submitted by Ted Cudsey, purchasing agent.
Thank you.
Does that mean, so if the Challenger Field plans, they submitted a proposal to change those plans that's being reviewed, or the proposal that they're gonna work on it is being reviewed? Weston and Sampson?
The proposal is being worked on that they're going to submit.
Okay.
Christine, to report the water district. Oh, well,
We could have had Hank do this. Yep. Okay, so the December 2017 monthly report, water pumped 77,000 gallons per day is the normal amount, and in December 2017 it was 95,000 gallons per day. Let me just see what this refers. Well, there's an asterisk, but I don't see the asterisk explanation under there. It says barred usage, so I'm assuming that means that something had happened at Bard that upped the, what is that, about 18,000 gallons per day. In the well levels, well 1 is at 20-foot resting and 42 feet running, and well 2 is offline, I gather, from the NAs here. But it does notice that they're gonna monitor the well level in 2018. The pump volumes for well 1 are 230 gallons per minute, and well 2 was 240 gallons per minute. No coliform detected in the reports. The turbidity report showed that it was below the appropriate amounts for December at 0.36, but I don't know what that, I don't know if that's parts per million.
Yeah.
It doesn't really say that, okay. The chlorine residual is at parts per million at 0.5, which is below where it should be. For ongoing items in 2018, there's water tests that will be done for nitrates, synthetic organic chemicals, THMS and HAA5, which are disinfectant byproducts, primary inorganic chemicals, and lead and copper at 10 sites. Filtration cartridges were replaced in July, and so a new supply will be ordered in February 2018. And they do list, I don't have to read it, but they do list the current inventory on various filter cartridges in stock. And also the current supply for the chlorine is, there's five full, and so there's no empties there on that. There's 26 outstanding work orders. And the proposal for, on the pump control, the proposal for Black Electric was accepted by the town board in September of 2017, so the contracts have been signed and filed with the town clerk. And the fee of $330 and the additional paperwork that was required was sent to the Dutchess County Department of Health for that, and they're waiting for final approval. And what's today? So the control panel was supposed to have been installed on Wednesday, January 17th, so we could have asked Hank that when he was here, to make sure if that had happened. And we did discuss earlier the assessment contract regarding the storage tank repair renovation versus replacement. So for 2018 work items list, in the water tower, there's cleanup of miscellaneous inspection comments, well number 2 rehabilitation as referred to earlier, and well level monitoring.
All right. Very good. Thank you very much, Christine. We're now on to committee reports. Bill, a couple of them, Rec Commission and the Intermunicipal Task Force.
Actually, I'm a Rec Commission liaison, so I could do it.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Bill's not, but I'll do it.
Okay,
Since I
sorry.
attend their meetings.
You gotta do the whole thing?
I'll give the highlights, how about?
Yeah, okay.
You want me to read it word for word?
No, I mean, I've got the highlights written, but you could do a better job.
Okay,
Alright, well,
well, I'll
so-
give it a try.
Jackie had Bill on
Yeah,
that.
so the tennis court rebuild is just about finished. The grassy area will be redone and new topsoil and hydro seeding will happen this spring. We did have some vandalism and we've done our best to block the walkways so that vehicles can't drive up onto the seated areas, but the way the rec park is designed, people may do it anyway and we just hope they don't. We're still waiting to hear back about our USTA grant application for the tennis courts. And the playground committee has met again with playground designers to look into a new playground plan, so that should be done soon. I would think maybe sometime in February we would have a plan to present and a possible budget. There's another tree that needs to come down in the rec park, and they're also going to add some trees that have fallen in the Sawkill Creek that are damming it up to that tree cutting budget, and Everhart Tree will do that. There's an Eagle Scout project to assemble 4 benches at 4 different sites in the rec park, so that should be completed in the early spring. And other than that, it just sort of lists like spending priorities mainly, so I think I'll forego those for now. Oh, I will just say that since there's no Trails Committee report, the Trails Committee met last night and is working on some new logos and designs for signage, so that's exciting.
Okay.
Since he mentioned it here also. I think that's probably it, unless you have anything else, Bill, that you wanted to mention. Oh, Kate Cavati is coming back to run the snack bar in 2018, so that's exciting.
Great.
And they're starting plans to, for the summer rec season, so.
Well, I was just going to mention that to everybody in Panda, that vandals have damaged, the rink surface and the rink walls and the roller hockey rink. And as usual, we have vandalism beyond what is reasonable for this great rec park that we have. And so everybody should be aware of what's happening around us. And if you see or know of anything concerning people who vandalize the town property, you should really bring it to the attention of the authorities, because it costs us a lot of money to do the repairs that the Rec Commission does very nicely with these ridiculous vandalisms that are perpetrated.
We have discussed the possibility of putting cameras there to help prevent that because the cost is adding up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Bill, your intermunicipal task
Well, the
force.
task force met in January again, weekly, and it's still reviewing the community solar project for the village and town of Red Hook, and began a discussion regarding Airbnbs in the town of Red Hook, and that's continuing.
Okay, Sarah, there's a tree preservation commission report.
Yep, so the tree commission chair Kathy Michael and member George Michael made a presentation to the Rotary Club on January 23rd and gave a history of the committee and discussed current efforts to restore the west end of Pitcher Lane. And Rotary members have agreed to partner with some financial support for 5 trees and assistance with planting and watering, so that's an exciting project. And beyond that, the tree committee members have met with John Kuhn at the Red Church Cemetery to discuss tree maintenance and grounds upkeep. And they're going to continue pruning, and it looks like the town will do cleanup and dispose of the brush. And they're redesigning their volunteer service hours form so that members can record that for the reports we have to make to Tree City each year. And they're just discussing who will attend that ceremony, which is in March. And they've ordered seedlings for the spring planting, right, Linda? So 100 assorted seedlings at a cost of $160. That's a lot of tree for the buck.
Yeah.
That's good.
And anybody that belongs to Arbor Day, you can have trees requested, you get 10 free trees. I'll take it.
Okay, great.
That concludes our committee reports. Correspondence, I for some reason don't have anything in my correspondence folder. I know we did receive a letter from, thank you. There were a couple of things actually. One was a letter from county planning. Unfortunately, we did not receive our last grant application. We were not awarded CDBG for the ADA bathrooms for the rec park annex, so we're gonna have to figure out, you know, some other way of getting that funding. So that's the correspondence I have in the folder. I think that's all I've got in my folder. Is there any other public comments before we go into executive session to discuss the hire and fire of a particular individual?
You should have received from New York State Department of State a letter from the Committee on Open Government regarding my complaint regarding the 3 board members attending the Intermunicipal Task Force. And the decision and the opinion was that once you have 3 board members, it's a meeting. You have a meeting, I want minutes. Right now, the public still does not know what goes on at these meetings that are held Friday in the morning. They can't get there. There are no minutes. So what do we know? What's being discussed? And again, 3 board members, you all should know that by now. That's a meeting. Fortunately, we have one person, Sarah, that knows, that has taken herself out of the situation when there were 3 together.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. I did see that letter. I apologize. I've been out sick for the last week or so, but I don't think that letter says what you're representing. I think it's a little bit like last week when you said we had in our code 72-hour requirement for agenda.
Which I wrote back and I explained
Which is not required, right? We do try our best to get the agenda available the day before. We don't put things on the agenda unless we feel confident that the materials will be ready, which is why oftentimes, whether it's a topic or several topics, we don't know whether or not it's going to be discussed.
Yeah, but you have a general outline, so you can put the general outline, you can always add to it.
You know, unfortunately, it's whatever we do, somebody's going to complain because somebody's going to look at an earlier version and say, how come this thing, number 7, wasn't on it when I looked at an earlier version? We do our best when we have a rough idea of the majority of items. We put that on the website and distribute it, and then we do make revisions to it from time to time. We'll try and get it done as soon as we can, but we had discussed as a board, even before I was on this board, to try to get them ready by sort of midday, the day before.
Well, your former supervisor had them ready 3 days before.
Well, I don't know what to
Try
tell
to
you.
beat her.
As far as the letter, I think the letter's pretty clear that he says that if it's an advisory, and from what it sounds like it's an advisory committee, it's not subject to open meetings law.
I agree on that.
Right. And so I think
However,
that's,
3 board members makes a meeting.
I'm sorry?
3 board members makes a meeting.
Again, I think that his opinion is very clear, that because of the nature of the committee, it's only
The
advisory.
Association of
It's-
Towns agrees on that too.
Right.
You've all been
It's-
trained on that.
Right. Okay, thank you, Linda. All right, any other public comment? If not, I would like to make a motion that we go into executive session to discuss the hire and fire of a particular individual. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much for coming.